and I'm here to talk about productivity. So the idea of a presentation, or rather the crux of it, is that you need to work smart, not hard. Before we begin, let me, gauge what the audience is looking for, because it's really important to understand what your audience is looking for, right? So if some of you tell me what it means to be productive, and what do you think you hope to achieve from this presentation?
Progress toward a goal.
Progress.
To be able to get more work done in less time.
Efficiently working. Excellent. Anyone else?
Effectively doing it as well.
There we go, yeah. You want to make sure that you get the right stuff done, not just doing some random tasks. Right. So some great thoughts there. So that is pretty much going to be what we're going to talk about today. Right. So I welcome all of you to join the conversation. If you're online on Adobe Connect, please feel free to post any questions there. If you have any questions, as and when we go through the slides, I would encourage you to hold on to them, like note them down or commit them to memory, rather than interrupting. We can talk about it later toward the end. The reasons for this will become clear as we head to the end of the presentation. Right. So before we get into the crux of the matter, we need to really make some definitions, put down some definitions, right? So just like Sagar, I put up the definitions from Google. So productivity means effectiveness of productive effort, how well you can get stuff done in a particular unit of time. Right? So this goes back to the days of manufacturing, the industrial era, where factory owners needed to get as much as productivity from their workers as possible. But in today's world, it's a little more complex. Not only trying to make, get as much time, make effective use of the time, but we also want to make sure that you get the right things done in a most satisfactory manner. Hacks. Now, what do you mean by hacks? Obviously, we are interested with the first definition. The second one, however, is, it goes back to computer hacking. Making unauthorized, or rather unauthorized access of computer systems by circumventing security structures. So this is where the word hacks comes from. You're understanding how the system works, understanding where the shortcomings are, and circumventing those to, improve your productivity. All right, so here are all the answers to all your possible questions. A very comprehensive graphic on how to be productive, right? So I'm just going to give you 5 seconds to memorize this, and I'll be back later with a short quiz to gauge your understanding. I'm just joking, of course. There's no way that we can do this in 5 seconds, or rather, even 5 hours. Because really, there's a lot of information to digest, and you're better off actually understanding why you're being productive, as opposed to, why you can make yourself productive, as opposed to say, how we can make yourself productive, right? So we're going to talk about the reasons your body fails in some occasions and how you can avoid those situations. All right, a couple of caveats before we actually get into the details. Your mind may vary, right? It may not be the same, it may not produce the same results for everyone involved. So, you might try to implement some of the concepts discussed here, but you might not get the results that you hope to achieve. It takes a while. Take what you can, keep an open mind, and try to implement it over time. The second caveat is, I'm going to give you some facts. I'm not here to sell snake oil. I can't talk about motivation or inspiration. So there are going to be some facts, some of my opinions, and we can discuss your thoughts on that as well. So keep an open mind. Yeah. So keep an open mind. Continue listening. At the same time, be a little skeptic. That's all I ask of you. Finally, we begin. The first fact we're here to talk about today is about exercise. Does anyone here exercise, do powerlifting, train weights? Sagar?
Well, we just started actually.
That's all right. What sort of exercise do you do?
Lift. I just lift.
Do you deadlift?
Yes.
Bench?
Yes.
How much do you deadlift?
I just touched 245.
Wow. And how much did you start with?
0, like just about.
And when did you start?
4 months ago, 4 or 5 months ago.
5 months.
Yeah.
So to get from 0 to 245, it took you 5 months. Similarly, we can say the same about our brains. Your willpower is a muscle. So you need to exercise it. You exercise it too little, and it just withers away. You have no willpower. You act on an impulse. You exerted too much and you're so tired so that your willpower doesn't fails to act when you need it the most. So you just keep exercising it and use it judiciously to make sure that you have very effective willpower. So what happens when you don't exercise your willpower effectively? For starters, you have poor decision-making skills, right? You make impulse purchases. You don't know how to distinguish between, say, watching Netflix or working on an important project. There's also no self-restraint, right? Procrastination. You just keep doing things on a whim, and pretty soon you're stuck with doing nothing at all. You get no work done. Absolutely, we've all been there, right? So how do you fix this? There are two ways to fix this. The strategy is twofold. So first, you got to keep exercising willpower. Make sure that you're strong. Just like how Sagar keeps lifting and make sure that his body is strong or muscles are strong. You also need to make sure that you don't overexert your willpower or or eliminate it when you need it the most, right? So one way to do is to form habits. So every time you make a decision, you're using up some of your willpower. For example, do I take the taxi to work in the morning or do I walk, right? So when you form a habit, so when I make it a habit to walk every morning, I don't bother deciding every morning, right? So it goes into my subconscious. So automatically I decide to walk instead of actually extinguishing my willpower every morning. Also, learn to say no. Right? Some of us learn to say yes to every time someone asks us to do something, right? It not only is a drain on our willpower, but it also is a drain on our self-respect. So learn to say no. It's a very powerful word. It takes a while for you to understand when to say no, when to say yes, but guaranteed you'll feel a lot stronger at the end. Also, have a few non-negotiable principles. For example, some people are vegans. They make it a point not to consume animal products. And some people are intensely religious. They make sure they attend religious services every week and pray regularly. So have a few principles in your life that you won't negotiate on any terms whatsoever. And when the time comes to decide, you can use these principles to rather make a quick decision. Also, push your comfort zone. That matters the most, right? You want to make sure that you keep exercising your willpower slowly and through it, right? So if you're working out in the gym, you slowly start increasing the amount of weights that you train on. You don't do it rapidly. So every time you try to pick up a new skill, just like I was talking about, learning new skills, so you gradually build it up, make more changes, and pretty soon you'll see the magic happening. Right, we move on to the next fact. I think this is pretty self-explanatory. We've all been there. So does anyone here have kids? You do, right? So I'm sure it's a lot of work raising kids, right? You're at home trying to get some chores done, at the same time you need to deal with the kids. You also need to deal with your after work projects and all that, right? So it's very overwhelming, right? You have to make sure that you get everything done, but you can't actually, everything's important. You can't let them go. So this is what we're going to talk about now. A few years ago, computers were advertised as being dual core processors, quad core processors, and all that, right? So really the objective was to project the concept of multitasking and making it a more efficient way to do work. However, the same can be said for the human brain. You can only do one task and make it a good job if you do only one task at a time. If you try to multitask, it's not going to work too well. You're not a computer. You'll just understand your biology. So what happens when you try to multitask? Well, first of all, you fatigue. Right? You're switching between different tasks, and all what happens is there's a cost of switching. Shifting your focus from one task to another, and pretty soon you feel tired without actually having accomplished anything. Okay? So there's a lack of focus because honestly you're trying to switch and you're not actually getting any work done. Finally, there's a lot of stress, right? You have a lot of things going on, and in the end, you're actually not achieving anything. You're just stressed out trying to figure out how to get all these things done. So how do you fix this? There's one solutions out there, but the crux is this: you throw in distractions, right? So some of the things that we do, for example, we just probably talked about checking your phone while you're on a presentation, or checking your emails 10 times every day, or rather, checking Facebook and so on. So you avoid this or rather prevent this. Notice the difference between prevent and avoid. I said prevent. So you prevent distractions by switching off your phone, or rather, locking yourself inside a quiet room when you want to work, and turning up your music when you're working, and so on, right? So you avoid the temptation to actually focus your attention onto a distraction. Also, implement batch processing in your life. When you work in batches, for example, checking email twice a day as opposed to 10 times a day, right? You get into the mindset of checking email. So the cost of actually switching is reduced because you don't keep switching 10 times. It's easier to switch 2 times. Also, schedule your work and maintain a to-do list. Of course, most of you do this. But when you do this, it actually puts your tasks away from your mind and commits it to, or rather, a list or your calendar when you go back to it later. The cost of putting it down onto a list is much less than actually attending to it. Now, this is a favorite tool of mine. This is called the Eisenhower Matrix. This was developed by Eisenhower, former U.S. president and a World War II general. Now, there are 4 quadrants in this matrix, right? You see not important, important, urgent, and non-urgent, right? So classify your tasks into the various quadrants, and you will quickly identify which needs your attention now and which can be done later. For example, you need to put out a fire, right? So that is important as urgent. You can't wait. So drop everything else you're doing, go put out the fire. Also, you want to check out the latest photos posted by your celebrity on Instagram. That might be not important, not urgent. I mean, for you it might be something else, but for me it's just waste. So I would rather not do it unless I have time to kill. I won't take up that particular task. Well, that wasn't the only tool though. There are many tools out there. If you just Google it, there are many techniques that you can implement to classify your tasks and make sure that you're using your time effectively. Now moving on to the next. All right. So we know what this fact means, right? So as you might get from a picture, your memory is limited. You don't have infinite capacity for memory. Right? For example, let's say computers. Right? You have a working memory, which is RAM, and a long-term storage, which is a hard drive. So similarly, our brain works in a similar fashion. You have a working memory and a long-term storage. When a computer runs slowly, you can add more RAM to make it run faster. You can do an upgrade. But the same can be said for your brain. There's no upgrade option. So you will have to work effectively with what you have and make sure that you don't waste any of your resources. What are the consequences of, or rather using your memory poorly, right, or overthinking? Forgetfulness. You may have some important piece of information that you forget over time, and when the time comes to recollect it, you feel pretty embarrassed, right? We've all been there. You know what I'm talking about. Also, there's a lot of stress. Has anyone experienced this? You have a thought, and soon it branches out into many sub-thoughts. And pretty soon you have an ecosystem of thoughts which you keep mulling over and keep stressing about, right? And pretty soon you're stressed out and you have no idea where to start or what to accomplish first. And also you're distracted. When driving on the road, you should be focusing on the road. You should be thinking about that project proposal that's due tonight. Right? So how do you fix this problem? There are a bunch of solutions, right? But the idea is to get out of your head committed to external storage, like you would do it on a computer. So external storage for you can be either a piece of paper or an online software taking system. So just write it down, and when you write it down, you commit it to a particular storage system, you immediately stop caring about it because you know that it's been safely stored away and you can review it whenever you want to. So it's also important to review it often so that it doesn't go into the back of the shelf, you don't forget about it totally. So keep reviewing your notes often. Also control the amount of information that you can take. Right, so because, like I said before, there's a switching cost between different activities, and also there's a limited memory that you have. So you're not going to take in every bit of information that you want. Control your intake. For example, do you want to keep browsing Facebook as you are working on a project? No, focus on your project. Or do you want to browse Reddit instead of attending to your chores, right? So control the amount of information you take. Set times for social media and while browsing websites. Make sure you limit your information. One particular tool that I like to implement this is called GTD, or Getting Things Done. I know it's a big flowchart over here, but let me just quickly explain it. So what it does is it gives you a very comprehensive system to categorize and sort of and store all your thoughts and actionable tasks. So you can store by, say, a context. For example, is it a home project, or is this something I need to do at work? Or you can store by time. Do I need to do it today? Do I need to do it next week? So you have these multiple different ways of categorizing tasks, which gives you a better way to store. It also well index it so that you can go back later and review it whenever you want to. So this is, of course, a topic in itself. If you want to talk more about this, we can carry on later. But for the scope of this presentation, we will carry on to the next slide. Fact number 4, right? We all know Sherlock. Anyone remember this line? That was very vague. I'm sure all of you watch Sherlock, right? I don't want to give up any spoilers.
Yes, why?
Okay.
Just give me spoiler. Yeah, not spoiler.
Okay, spoiler alert. Close it up. Yes. Right. So in one of the episodes, he talks about this and how he doesn't eat while he's working because digestion slows him down. This is actually true. I mean, when you during the digestion process, blood flow is diverted from the rest of the body towards the stomach and the intestines. And so what happens is it sort of makes you drowsy, and we've all been there, right? You've had a heavy lunch and feel drowsy and able to work. But that's exactly what happens. But here Sherlock doesn't eat because it makes him work better. If you read the Sherlock books, you know that he doesn't eat at all when he's working on a case. He just smokes his pipe and he cracks the case. But in real life, that's a lot of bull. You're human. You need to eat. You need to go to the bathroom. You need to sleep. So don't forget that. Never forget that. Attend to your basic needs first. Yeah, make sure that you're all good. Then you can go back to saving the world or whatever you're up to. So what happens when you don't attend to yourself? You're depressed, right? You don't eat well, you don't sleep well, and pretty soon you lack motivation to do anything. You're just in a slump. You don't know what to do. You're caught in a rut. You're also constantly fatigued, right? You don't have rest. You don't eat. You just can't keep drinking coffee. You're not Batman or Superman. So coffee is a drug. It's a temporary fix. It's not a permanent solution. So make sure you sleep well and eat well and attend to your basic human needs. And in most extreme cases, if you don't attend to yourself, you die. So I hope that's a good enough reason for you to take care of yourself. How do we fix this? Well, prioritize your work, of course. Like I said before, your basic needs comes first, and then everything else. And also reward yourself, right? When you accomplish something of great degree, you want to make sure that you have an incentive at the end. For example, I just say you wrapped up an important presentation, like I've done. You're going to go later today and have some drinks with friends. That could be a reward. So extreme cases, let's just say you just got a new job. You want to go to a fancy dinner with friends, right? And things like that. Also, acknowledge limitations, right? Some people can sleep 6 hours a day and still do a great job, so be very, very productive in the morning. Some people need 8 hours or more to be productive. So find out. Bit of a twist there. So anyway, find out what you really need and how much you need to be productive. Don't overdo it, of course. It's going to take a bit of research to understand where you stand. So, but the most important thing is to acknowledge your limitations and work around. So one of the tools I like to sort of help me prioritize my work is, I'm sure all of you know this, right? Can anyone identify this? There you go, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's a very popular tool or theory in management, but the same can be applied to your everyday life. So, for example, when I was preparing for the presentation yesterday, I started with my physiological needs. Right? So you start with the bottommost needs, move up to the top, and as you move to the top, you want to make sure that the level below is satisfied, so you can move up to the top without any problems. So I start with physiological needs. Do I need to go to the bathroom? Do I need to eat? Am I hungry? Once it's satisfied, I move to my safety. Do I have a comfortable place where I'm not disturbed or anything prepared? Right, I have that. Next, move to love belong. I'm not sure if it really applies to the situation, right? But I do feel belong, I do feel loved. So next, move to the next one. Esteem. Do I feel confident enough to do this presentation, right? So I think about all the presentations I've done and all my past work, and I boost my self-confidence. Give myself a little pep talk. I can do this. I can do this. Now, okay, I know how they esteem. Now we move on to self-actualization, which is the actual work. I want to come here, talk about this, talk about my experiences, exchange some knowledge with you all, and that's really what is ultimately motivating me to be here. Right? So you start with here, and you slowly work your way up to the top, and you find yourself doing a very great job. What do you want to do? All right. So ultimately, we talked about a lot of things today, but there's one fact we want to take away is that you need to be happy to be productive, right? So research has constantly shown how being motivated or being happy makes you naturally motivated to do what you want to do. So you're not stuck in a rut, or you're not motivated nonsense. So when you're happy, you're actually motivated to do what you want to do. When you're motivated, you don't take in distractions. You just want to get your work done because that matters to you a lot right now. Once you get your work done, you're extremely happy because you got it done. And this sort of creates a virtuous cycle to keep moving on and on to create more productive stuff. Of course, this is a very loaded phase here. You want to look at your long-term gains as opposed to short-term or instant gratification. All right. So do what makes you happy, but don't do drugs because it makes you happy. Think big, and pretty soon you'll be finding that there's a lot you can do to make yourself productive. Thank you. Okay, so I suppose we have another 5 minutes, so let's use this time to sort of discuss our productivity problems and what strategies we use to overcome those problems. So I'm hoping we can all have a nice open discussion, like but it doesn't have to be that bad. Any questions? Sure.
I was wondering, so the Maslow's hierarchy, that was an awesome presentation, by the way, thank you. So sometimes you can sort of diminish your psychological need, your physiological needs, because of like a psychological positioning or attitude, right? So do you think the triangle is actually still useful to think of it in a linear way to start off with an assessment of your physiological needs? Because that experience where and then you follow the next slide, be happy, feel fulfilled. It just seems to me like that model might break down a little bit when you can't prioritize just based on an attitude or a position of motivation, and just sort of ignore those other more like basic needs. There might be like a new paradigm than the Maslow's hierarchy.
Right. I agree with that. I mean, like it goes back to one of the first slides what I mentioned, that your management rate, right? So there are always exceptions to the rule, and there are some people who might not find that particular thing very useful. It's just a theory. It's not a law. It's not a law of nature. Right? But it's one way to look at your life and see how you can modify. For some people, some of the tiers mean a lot more than other tiers. Right? For example, some people, like you said, may not be very concerned about physiological needs, so they'll automatically move on to the next tier, which is self-actualization, and reach that last year much quicker than the other people.
Yes, like Marcy talked a little bit about how we're human, but we're also moving to other stages, right? So like trans.
Right, you could say that, yeah. Any other questions?
Switching. I've read about the problem of switching being called the cognitive switching penalty. One of the metrics I've read is that if you're a programmer and you're interrupted even briefly, it's 15 minutes gone. Have you seen any tricks for how to manage that? I mean, we say prevent distractions, but those distractions happen. They're going to happen.
Do you mean like people interrupting you when you're working?
When you're working, yeah. So if you're sitting somewhere and you're doing something and somebody interrupts you, are there things that you can be doing while you're working that will help when those distractions happen?
Right. So there's one interesting example that I've read about, particular to programming. So there's this thing called rubber duck debugging. Not sure if you've heard of it. So basically, what happens is there's this guy who used to be a star programmer, and people would keep bugging him for debugging their own code. So what he did was he got tired of it, and he put up a rubber duck at his desk. So he told people, go and explain your problems to the rubber duck, not to me. So people started talking to the rubber duck, and it turns out that they just needed to think their problem aloud, and that's all they needed to solve the problem. Well, you may not have to do that actually, but one thing I would suggest is there's this book called 4 Hour Workweek, The 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Right. So he has some tricks that for making sure that interrupt at work. For example, setting your expectations straight. Sending an email to all your coworkers saying that, hey, please don't disturb me while I'm working. I'll be happy to answer any questions between say 12 in the afternoon to 1 in the afternoon, and something like that. Or create a automatic reply back email whenever someone emails you saying that, hey, I don't generally reply to emails as soon as they get here. If it's an emergency, please call me at this number, something like that. So set the expectations straight. Make sure that people know that they won't be disturbed.
Do you think it's valuable? So I feel like I'm working pretty constantly because I think about things before I go to sleep and I wake up and I'm still thinking about. So do you think it's important to leave your work at work, not to take it home, to have a chunk? You kind of alluded to that just now a little bit. But do you think it's important to set boundaries like that very distinctly, or is it important to be able to
very interesting question. But you know, in my personal opinion, it's not the place, it's not a physical location, but you know how well you feel convenient working at that particular time, right? So if you have a lot of work, leftover work, when you once you finish your regular 9 to 5 hours, you even want to bring it home. But the idea here is to make sure that the work you do at home, for example, your chores or your personal stuff, don't exactly mingle with your work. So what I do is I set clear times for what I want to do, right? Because when you switch between different things, right, you have all these different thoughts in your mind, and pretty soon you get stressed out. So you want to make sure that you focus just one thing at a time, and not make sure that it mix.
So podcast in the background, not
Well, yeah, that's another good question. It depends on what you want to do, right? If you're doing the dishes, I listen to podcasts when I'm doing dishes, right? Because doing dishes is a subconscious activity. You're not actually using any willpower to make decisions. You just do it going with the flow as it goes. Right? So it can actually make your job easier when you're listening to a podcast because you're not feeling bored. You have something productive going on.
So parallel processing, if the tasks are cognitively different, is okay.
Yeah, well, as long as it comes down to how much mental energy you're using, right? If it's routine task that's gone into your brain, if you don't actually need to think anything, it's a very mundane task. You might actually help. But if the other task you want to, for example, if you're trying to learn a new language to podcast or doing the dishes, I mean, you may want to think about whether it's actually draining you. Would you be better off doing it separately, right? When you have your full attention to learning a new language.
Like passive learning is a myth. There's no passive learning. There's not.
It's like music for babies while they're sleeping.
That's a different thing though. That's more to kind of soothe them, whatever. But they say like leave your language podcast on in the background while you're. It's nonsense.
Anything online? So yeah, sort of something related to what Sarah just asked. So, when you're trying to maximize productivity, it's all about efficiency, right? It's you take into all the different factors. You have to think about the whole system, not just what you're doing, but what you may actually be distracted about. Something which may come up in the near future, which may require attention. So, it's a fine balancing act. It takes a while for you to master it. So definitely, do a lot of reading, look it up online. There are great tools, many apps. If you have a smartphone, you have a lot of things. For example, blocking Facebook when you need to work. There are many apps for different purposes. So I would definitely encourage you to do a little more research on this and find something that works for you, and just keep improving continually. All right, thank you very much.